I have done this video now for 3 years straight, and not only because I love IDP Dynasty Fantasy Football, but because I also find a lot of value in finding some of the top sleepers in IDP as well, because there's plenty of sleepers in normal fantasy football formats where you can find the exact same thing when it comes to IDP. You just have to be watching for it. So today, we are going through the top 5 Dynasty IDP rookie sleepers in the 2024 Dynasty rookie class. But of course, this is a new channel exclusively for Dynasty, so please go down there and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support if you get value from this video today. So the first guy I want to talk about here is a guy that I really liked the film on before he got drafted, and I was curious why he dropped to the 3rd round, because Peyton Wilson, linebacker of the Pittsburgh Steelers, to me seemed like a total steal in the 3rd round. Now, I'll get into why he was a 3rd round pick in just a little bit here, but first I want to highlight the positives here when it comes to Peyton Wilson, because I think there are plenty. First of all, this guy is athletic. He's big and he's athletic. This guy tested at 4.43 in the 40-yard dash, the fastest 40-yard dash time among any linebacker in this year's Dynasty rookie class. Now, what makes it so impressive, right? A 4.43 40-yard dash time, that's already an impressive time for any linebacker. In today's NFL, you want a more fast linebacker who can cover sideline to sideline on any occasion. But what makes it more impressive is this guy is 6'4" and 233 pounds. And I'm not talking like this guy's an outside linebacker, he's a pass rusher. No, this guy's a middle linebacker. At that size, with that type of closing speed, that highlights why he's a tackle machine as well. Because not only does he have great closing speed, but this guy, like I said, he's a sideline to sideline middle linebacker, and that's why he had 138 total tackles in 2023. So again, keep in mind, if you're playing Dynasty IDP, likely your Dynasty IDP scoring style is going to be IDP 123, which values tackles as the baseline format for all fantasy points scored. It's kind of like having yards when you're talking about a receiver or a running back. Well, tackles are the bread and butter of any Dynasty player. So if this guy can translate this to the NFL level, this is something that's going to work. And like I said, closing speed is clear because this guy is not only a sideline to sideline guy, you can also see it in the way that he does play the ball. He has a nose for the ball. 3 picks, including a pick 6 this past year, and 2 forced fumbles in 2023. So this guy is always around the ball because he's got the speed to close on guys when they're at the line of scrimmage or even if they're down the field. And this is just a great value pick to me. Now, let's address why he was a value and why he's a 3rd round pick and why I think that the Steelers got to steal with this guy. So it came out that he doesn't have an ACL in one of his knees. I don't remember if it was the right or the left, but essentially he got 2 ACL injuries not too long, in between each other, and he does not have an ACL in one of his knees. So that obviously presents long-term medical issues that I have not enough knowledge of because I'm not a doctor, but I do know that no ACL is not really something that's great. Like, it kind of reminds me of the Todd Gurley thing years ago. And this guy is 24 years old. So theoretically, like, if it's going to become a problem in his career, it probably will happen within the first 3 years, which makes him a little bit uneasy for Dynasty. But I tell you this guy will walk in and be a starter next to Patrick Queen in Pittsburgh day 1. They used the day 2 draft capital to make him start day 1. That will happen with Peyton Wilson. And the upside I think he could provide you within the first 3, 4, 5 years of his career, it's just too big not to have him on this list of Dynasty IDP sleepers. Now, the next guy I want to talk about here is going to be a safety. And of course, if you're an IDP, you want to have a safety who's going to make a lot of tackles. And this is a guy who was a very heavy tackler in 2023. Dadrian Taylor Demerson, safety out of Texas Tech, Reckham Tech, by the way. And he went to Arizona in the 4th round of the draft this year. Now, again, a lot of the times, like if you've seen any of these videos in years past, what I look for when it comes to sleeper IDP guys in particular is I want to make sure that they have the physical tools that they're going to match, production and upside that there could be in their Dynasty careers as IDP options. Now, this guy is athletic. Again, at the safety position, one of the best 40 times in the draft, 4.41 40-yard dash. So this guy definitely has closing speed, and it's evident when you watch him on film, because a lot of the times, like, there's guys who will test fast in the 40, but I won't really see closing speed on the defensive end, and that's a deal breaker for me. If you're fast in shorts, but you're not fast on the field, and you can't see the closing speed, there's a disconnect there that I don't like to play Russian roulette with, as far as if they're actually going to bring that closing speed that they tested at to the NFL level. So this guy definitely has closing speed. You can watch him on film. He's got closing speed for sure. Now, this guy is also a playmaking safety. And what I really like is, aside from him being a heavy tackler, which we'll get into in a minute, this guy had 4 picks and 8 passes deflected in 2023. So when I watched him, and keep in mind, I'm a Texas Tech grad. I watch Texas Tech football regularly. A lot of the times, like, what I noticed about Dayquan was that he was just always kind of in the right place at the right time. And he would get really poorly thrown balls just drop into him. And that always makes me wonder, like, how good are you really at playing the ball? But there's 2 things to that. Number 1 is, if you are always in the right spot, it means you're doing something right. And number 2 is, he also does make plays on the ball. They're just not quite as much with the interceptions. But 8 pass deflected, that doesn't lie. That is a good number here for a safety for sure. Especially a guy who a lot of times plays deep safety, which Dayquan Demerson did. And the heavy tackling is on display with 73 total tackles in 2023. So that's exactly the baseline I am looking for when it comes to IDP safeties in particular. If you play deep safety all the time and you only finish the year with 30, 35, 40 tackles, that baseline is just not stable enough, even if you come away with 4 or 5 picks in a year. That's just not good enough. So we need a good tackling baseline, and he brings that to the table. Now, my only problem, and really the reason that he wasn't inside of my top 10 IDP players in this year's class, the only reason he wasn't inside there is because he's a smaller guy at 5'10 and 197 pounds. So that's probably a reason why he fell to the 4th round, if you want to call it a fall. I don't know if you want to call it that, but it's definitely why he's not inside my top 10. And if you want to get a look at the top 10 Dynasty IDP players, my 2024 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide is dropping on Monday. And the way that you can get a free copy of a $15 draft guide is sign up with code FFN on Underdog Fantasy today. And not only will you get a free copy of the Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, including IDP, you'll also be able to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit match up to $250 in bonus cash. So sign up with code FFN today, and you'll get a free copy of the draft guide and that special offer right here. So at number 3 here, this is another safety right here, and he was another late-round safety in the 5th round, day 3 type of guy. But there's a lot of good things I could see in Indianapolis's offense. And Jaylen Simpson. Jaylen Simpson went in the 5th round, and he's a safety. And this guy, again, very similarly to Dayquan, he has the athleticism I'm looking for. The athletic profile is definitely there. 4.45 40-yard dash time. And again, I'm looking for it to translate on film, and it does exactly that when you watch him. He has good aggressive closing speed. Now, the difference here between Dayquan and Jaylen Simpson is that Jaylen Simpson is not really a tackle-heavy guy, and that's a big concern for me as well. He only had 36 tackles in 2023. That baseline is just not stable enough for him to really matter in Dynasty Fantasy Football when it comes to IDP. We need more. We need 50, 60, 70 at the very least for you to really be a solid fantasy contributor on a week-to-week basis. But what he does do, very similar to Dayquan, he has a good nose for the ball. 4 picks and 3 passes deflected in 2023. Now, the difference here between Dayquan and Jaylen Simpson, I think, is 2 things, actually. Number 1 is that I would personally argue, from years of watching Texas Tech football, Texas Tech's defense is always weak. So if you have a safety who's getting 70-plus tackles, that also, like, he's a good tackler, Dayquan is, but it also shows that, like, the first 2 layers of defense are not good enough. And that's been Texas Tech's case for years now. So a safety getting 70 tackles is more of an indictment on his defense, and he probably won't have that problem as much at the NFL level. Now, with Jaylen Simpson, the other difference here is that I actually think he plays the ball better than Dayquan does. I think he's actually more of a playmaker when the ball is in the air. And he has that good nose for the football that's displayed by those turnover numbers right there. What the reason is why I think Jaylen Simpson can evolve into more of a tackling guy, because when I watch him on film, he plays really aggressively. And he plays at a level of like multiple layers of the defense. He can go up towards the line of scrimmage and make an aggressive tackle for a loss. So I have confidence that he can grow into more of a tackling safety, as opposed to just kind of being a deep safety who doesn't have tackling skills but does have ball skills, which of course is just not as valuable in IDP leagues. Now, the next guy that I want to talk about here is the only corner on the list. Typically, corners I'm not as interested in, because a lot of times corners don't have a stable baseline of tackles. And when you see Dayquan Hardy's tackling numbers, you'll be like, why is he even on the list? So Dayquan Hardy is a cornerback slot corner, went to Buffalo in the 6th round. Now, Dayquan Hardy is not my typical favorite corner in the NFL and in IDP Dynasty Fantasy Football. The first reason is because he's small. He's 5'9" and 179 pounds. So that doesn't really bode well for like evolving into a strong tackling guy. Now, again, slot corners are not always great in IDP, because for a long time, like most teams weren't running 3 wide receiver sets 70-60% of the game. Well, this is changing over time, obviously, because most offenses are running 3 wide receiver sets most of the time during the NFL game. So he has a need to be on the field a lot of times if he's a starter. With slot corners in particular, what I have found through years and years of playing IDP is 2 things are necessary. The first thing is he needs to be an aggressive playmaker. And that's exactly what Dayquan Hardy is. And the other thing is that he needs to play at the line of scrimmage to have more opportunities for not only tackles for losses, but he needs to go on a rush to go get a sack. Dayquan has both of those qualities. He runs a 4.38 40-yard dash time, one of the best 40 times out of all the corners in the draft. And this guy has lots of playmaking ability at the line of scrimmage. 3 tackles for loss. He had 2 picks as well, and 7 passes deflected in 2023. So that 3 tackles for loss does show that he can be at the line of scrimmage and play very aggressively. The 2 picks, 7 passes deflected, when you watch him on film, he's good against the ball. He can stick with receivers with that speed. He's shifty as well, so he doesn't have a problem going up against slot wide receivers who are typically better route runners and are more shifty on the inside. He sticks with him and he plays the ball very well. What I really like about Dayquan, and this is going to sound crazy, he only had 22 tackles in 2023. Again, that's a horrible baseline. You can't afford to do that in IDP. It's about qualities for me. He's feisty and he's an aggressive tackler. At the line of scrimmage, this guy makes plays, man. So for me, I look at a guy like Mike Hilton, who spent several years with the Pittsburgh Steelers and now is a Cincinnati Bengal. Well, Mike Hilton in 2023, Mike Hilton was averaging about 10 fantasy points per game, 10.3 fantasy points per game, and he had 64 tackles, because Mike Hilton is not your typical cover slot wide receiver corner. This is not that guy. Mike Hilton is at the line of scrimmage a lot, making plays behind the line of scrimmage. So for me, I could see Dayquan evolving into that type of player if Buffalo gives him the opportunity to do so. And the last guy on the list at number 5 is more of an old school middle linebacker type, but one I think has a solid baseline if he gets the opportunity, and I think he will. Trevon Wallace, linebacker, went to Carolina in the 3rd round. So 3rd round is already decent draft capital. Like, Carolina has so many holes to fill. I probably see him being able to start day 1, or at least being a role player day 1. And again, this guy is more old school. Like, you think about the first linebacker I covered, Peyton Wilson. That guy is a sideline to sideline guy. He's got plenty of athleticism to cover both sides of the field at all times. This isn't really like that with Trevon Wallace. Trevon Wallace is not sideline to sideline, but he does have decent level athleticism. 4.51 40-yard dash time. That's good in today's modern NFL. That's about average in today's modern NFL. Not only though, the one thing I really like about him is he seals the middle like an old school guy. He's physical, he's aggressive, he's a brutal tackler, and he makes sure that that second layer of the defense behind the defensive line is secure. Anything over the middle, that's coming through him. 80 tackles in 2023 proves that. Why I think he's more of an old school guy as well is because he finds himself behind the line of scrimmage a ton. 8.5 tackles for loss in 2023 and 5.5 sacks. This guy is always behind the line of scrimmage. So not only is he making aggressive plays to fill holes, not waiting for the running back to come to him, he's also going on a blitz up the middle of the center, up the middle right by the guard. So this guy is running through the defense at that offensive line and making sacks happen as well. So unlike with Dayquan, I don't have a pro comp for a guy like Trevon Wallace. Again, he's very old school. But what I will say is, this guy is 21 years old. So for me, with the upside he has to be just a solid baseline guy to get you 100 plus tackles per season, at that age, we could see a solid 10 to 13 fantasy points per game in an IDP format from Trevon Wallace, I would say, if everything hits, for the next 10 years. Now, let me know what you think of these guys in the comments below and what questions you have about other Dynasty IDP sleepers as well.